All right, we are live. It's Thursday. It's a little after 9, which means we're recapping Mastery Chat. A great chat tonight. A lot of action in the chat. A lot of great conversations going on. I've got Hedreich Nichols here, who led us in a great conversation today and is now jumping live with us. So super excited to have you here. Thanks for moderating the chat tonight and leading us. Really appreciate that. Thoughtful discussion, important discussions. And really just really thank you for doing that for us. How are you feeling right now after the chat?
You know, it's funny. When I planned originally, we were still kind of watching the protests. And when you guys originally asked me, we were still really kind of in the whole George Floyd after that, the Black Lives Matter protests and stuff. And I put the questions out. And as I started school 3 weeks, but most of my colleagues were starting like last week, this week, next week. And I was thinking, gosh, I wonder if I should have been doing something, something for school reopening. A lot of people really have that heavy on their minds. I'm also a tech teacher. Maybe I should have really gone on, the whole how to engage kids virtually. And I thought, I'm just going to go with it. And then when Jacob Blake was shot, I thought, my God, I really wish that this was a conversation that I wish I'd chosen something else, but it ended up being relevant, and I wish it hadn't, unfortunately.
I wish that wasn't the reason it was relevant. I think it's always an important conversation, but yeah, it's unfortunately when it becomes super relevant, it's because of something like that happening. So, so that if you weren't in the chat, it looks like everyone who's jumping in so far was in the chat. If you weren't, the topic tonight was part of our Conversations for Change. It was handling class discussions on race, and I'm always proud of our Mastery Chat family and community, because when we have these types of discussions, really when we have any discussions, but it's particularly these conversations around change and stuff, there's a lot of vulnerability, a lot of authenticity, a lot of transparency of what we all don't know. And I like it because there's so much that we don't, and there's so much that maybe we thought we did, and now we're learning that we don't. And this community really opens up and says, hey, I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to be better. And that makes me proud to be a part of that. So I appreciate you helping us continue to have those conversations. When you were put into, well, let me stop real quick before we go into that more. I want to, just for anybody who's watching who has maybe never met you before, maybe never interacted with you until maybe tonight's chat or right now. Can you give us the sort of introduction to yourself? What do you do? Where are you at? What's your role in education? That type of stuff. Make sure you mention small bits in there and stuff too. So,
all right, yeah, I am Hedreich Nichols from North Texas. I am a tech teacher, lead educator of educators, an author with my first 2 books coming out very soon, an author and host of Small Bites, the YouTube series on equity strategies.
Tell me about the book. When's what you said your first book coming out?
Yeah. I mean, I am like, when I say author, I mean like I'm on it big time. I am working on a book on equity strategies for Hedreich Lake Publishing. That's due out next year. And I am working also, I just completed 2 commissioned books for, Solution Tree. And then I just completed 2 commissioned books for a Cherry Lake 6-book series on anti-racism, Black Lives Matter, all of those concepts. And so I just and I just got an email saying the next time you'll see them, it'll be in layout, which was like.
That's a good email to get. That's fantastic. So when do you expect them to actually be out? You said
those should be in press in October, November, and be out by the first of the year.
Okay, great. Wow.
And that's a middle school library series. So I'm a middle school teacher. Well, that's super exciting. So
that's super exciting.
In our library.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on all that. That's awesome. You need to make sure that you're sharing that with the team so we can help make sure everyone's aware of that when that comes out. That's really, really cool. So awesome. So congrats. You're getting a bunch of congrats in the comments and stuff here of people watching. So I want to say really quick hello to some people that are jumping in. Jeff Kaplan, good to see you, buddy. I hope you're out of quarantine now. I'm not sure. You might still have a little bit left. He had to go into quarantine. Livia, good to see you. Lindsay. I'm seeing some other ones that don't have names. The
Facebook user.
So that's a Facebook. It's their security, depending on where they're watching from, because we're on a bunch of different places. Typically, in a group, it doesn't pop up the way. My phone's not showing me names either. I don't know why.
Oh, I've got
and Nikki's here as well.
I got one. I see Tracy, my friend from New Orleans, who is still good, thank God. So yes.
Good to know. Yes.
Oh, Lydia, thank you.
Great to hear. So let's talk about the chat. And I'm gonna try not to take us off topic from what we talked about before we went live. We'll do that later. But let's talk about the chat. So when you were putting that together, the questions, so you said you kind of went back and forth. Did you go back and look at the questions? Did you change anything, or did you leave them what you originally went with? Did you change it all prior to? You kind of left. Okay. So when you were putting those together, what was the goal? What were you hoping that everyone in the chat was going to either to take away, to learn, to sort of, I guess the best way to phrase it is to take away from the chat? What were you hoping they would get out of the questions?
It's like you said, we go from murder and outrage to, oh, I got some other stuff I got to do, to murder and outrage and, oh, well, school reopening, or, my children need to go to the dentist, or, if you are not living this experience, often you just kind of retreat into your regular life because it's not present for you. And you saw my son come down. This year, he got taller than me and grew enough facial hair, so the world really doesn't see him as a kid anymore. They see him as a man. And he's had some confrontations that have hit me really hard because my cute little baby boy, who is still this wonderful, sweet kid, is seen as this threatening person to be feared, which may endanger his life. And so there, I don't get to retreat back into anywhere because it's an ever-present thing. And that's I can't remember, I think Kalissa was her name. She mentioned, the collective, that just practicing self-care is so important because the collective trauma of this happening over and over is such a very real thing for the Black community. It's because for us, it's not outrage and then, okay, rest, and then outrage, and then the rest. There are a million different microaggressions that you live and deal with on a daily basis. And that's sometimes just so wearying. So when I thought of the questions, I really decided, no, yes, school is reopening, but this is still a topic that we can't just let fade into the background. Everybody went from, oh, I got to read Anna Racist Baby to, oh my gosh, school is reopening. And I get it. School is reopening for me too. I am not yet having these deep conversations with my kids on social justice, but the work continues, So it was to remind people that this work continues.
Yeah, and that's really important because like the fact is that there's so many of us. I'm able to fall back into that. That's just the truth, and it's just something that that I've really internally been trying to continue to grow on, educate myself on. I tried my best to understand it. It's just something that is so. When you were saying that to me, I was just thinking to myself that like that's something that you now have to worry about every day that I will never have to worry about. And that is why these conversations are important. So I'm really glad that you kept it this way. I'm sure there's a million things you could have led us on that would have provided a ton of value, but I think you hit it right on the head when the fact that with these conversations can't only come up and be relevant when something happens and a tragedy happens. It's one of the reasons why we kept the conversations of change as an overarching, because we talked about it. We wanted to do it for a while because we realized that we, as a team, did not have the knowledge that we want. We were ignorant on a lot of things, and we wanted to push this out to our community, and the community was asking for it. And what we were afraid of is exactly what you're talking about. We're like, okay, well, so we do it for a while, and then what? We just go back and we never talk about it again? And then why? What's the point of that? How is that good? And so we wanted to continue to have these conversations while also having the other chats around technology and coming back to school and stuff. We wanted to make sure we were continuing in and having that type of stuff. We're actually working on a live series that's going to start in February around these conversations as well to continue that growth. But tonight was a really great conversation around that. So I appreciate that. As we look into like the conversation of getting in there, and I know it gets crazy and there's no way to see like all the answers that come through and stuff during the chat. I think we did pop in the top 20 trending tonight just for a little while. Which is great. We do that almost every weekend. We get in the top 20 in the United States. Sometimes we hang there for a while. Sometimes we don't. There was a lot of hashtags that are really big right now around social justice and around the politics and stuff like that. So I wasn't sure, but we popped up there for a little while. So like there was a lot of conversation going on tonight around Master Chat. Were there any answers or little offshoot conversations or anything like that that came up tonight that really either struck you in a positive way, in a concerning way, or just really popped out to you or stood out to you? And you don't have to remember that exact user or words they said, but if you can get around the theme of what those answers were.
Okay, well, I will reiterate that self-care thing, and that's for the Black community, especially because we keep experiencing it as trauma, but also those people who have equity on your hearts. You know what I mean? To just remember to practice self-care, because it's sometimes an uphill battle. So that practicing self-care was a big one. Even did small bites on that. That's a big thing this year period with everything that's happening, you know, and being so connected because you're home a lot more. Practicing self-care is huge. That's huge.
We have so much more time to think about all the negativity and think about things and hone on things, like you said, things that are on our heart. Yeah, so that self-care is so crucial right now. After these last 6 months now, whatever it's been. So
I think there was one person, Tracy said about practicing, about doing the personal work. She was talking about, she wrote something about her journey and how she had a revolutionary kind of just an inner work kind of a thing. And I think often we talk about policies and we're talking about changing curriculum and we talk about reading this book or using this lesson plan. And we don't talk about the fact that it's personal change, not policy change, that's really going to make the difference. That we have changed policies over and over. The 13th Amendment was a policy change and it didn't really do a whole lot of good because no one was talking about doing the personal work. And so we are not doing the inside work to say, who was it? Tim Riley said, I don't get the struggle about why is it hard to have these conversations? What's so hard about treating people the way you want to be treated? Yeah, exactly. So whatever preventing us from treating others as we want to be treated, you know, treating children the way I want my child to be treated. If my kid goes to school in a Black Lives Matter shirt, there's a way that I want him to be treated. That means that if a child comes in my class with a MAGA hat or a Blue Lives Matter, I have to also respect that opinion, because in the classroom, my first duty is to do no harm, to protect my kids in the classroom, to give them the opportunity to critically decide what is right for them, whether or not I agree with it. And so that's, I think, that's a big thing, treating others the way you want to be treated and doing the interpersonal work so that you can get to a place that's in the forefront, not what you believe.
That's so awesome. That's so spot on about it is having that respect, and it just comes down to what you were talking about. Like, why is this so hard for us to just treat each other the way it is, or the way we want to be treated? And it's a really hard. I don't understand it either. It's really it's crazy. You talk about doing the personal work. I agree, because if enough of us can do that and grow enough, that's what will lead to the actual policy changes. That actually, because the policies can change, it doesn't necessarily mean the system changes. It takes a whole lot of policy change for any of those systems that have been in place for decades and decades and decades, right? And it needs to be starting with that personal growth. So totally agree with that. Can I throw one or two of the questions at you, and you can go live right here with what you did, and you can vamp on it a little bit further if you want. Let me see which one I want to pull out.
And just make sure you also, Jeff Kaplan had a question, what can I do for my students now? And I just want to make sure that we don't lose that as it goes.
No, where did he go with that?
It's up there. It's a little further.
All right, you're up. That's the question I'm posing right there. Jeff always wins.
What can I do to help my students now? That, of course, depends on who your students are. If you teach, and I love this, a lot of the people in the Mastery Chat said, I'm from a low diversity suburban school, but I still see it as necessary to bridge the knowledge gap for my kids. So if you're in a low diversity school, then you'll want to bridge the knowledge gap, make sure that they understand that it's not their problem. Oh, well, we don't have those issues in our community, but that it's a community problem. I teach the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And if you don't know, like Donna Guerin's and Inspire Citizens work, they do that in a very big way. And that's kind of, it's basically teaching empathy and making sure that empathy turns to action, to actual action, social justice, eradicating hunger, et cetera, et cetera. So when you are in a low diversity school, making sure that kids are globally connected, nationally connected, so that whatever the problems are, knowing that, we are our brother's keeper. If you are in a Title I school where you have large groups of diverse populations that have been more adversely affected by COVID than the rest of the nation, then you have other work to do. You really want to look up trauma-informed practices and see the kinds of things that the kinds of ways that kids react, so that you might understand the framework for negative reactions and be able to meet them where they are and get them perhaps counseling services, or, kids have moved. I drove down the street the other day and I saw a family living out of their truck. And I thought, my God, this has really affected people where they are now homeless, or families in transition situations where they had to move back in the house with mom and them and grandmom and them. And those situations are very real. And we just meet our kids online and we try to make them, get engaged with our lessons. But knowing that those are the kinds of things that are going on in the background, finding out, really doing what it takes to find out what they need. And those are the two situations that really right now are uppermost in my mind. Because in the situation where kids have real needs, it's less about teaching about social justice and making sure that, Maslow before blooms.
I know Jeff's eating that up. That's a great question, Jeff. Thanks for asking that, because that was an awesome answer. So I'm glad that came up.
Oh, wait, I have one more. I forgot.
No, you go. You don't even have to ask. You just go. I will shut up. Yeah, I'm telling you.
This is, because I did not mention, I said, one side, the other side. If you have a diverse population, that's probably the most challenging situation. I mean, I can deal with trauma. I know that. Diverse situation. The neighborhood high school here, they used to be the Warriors. And they are no longer, I think they might be still the Warriors, but they still have the high school name. So they just have the letter, and there's no more Indian Chief. And the Facebook page was vitriol. I mean, they were going at each other and just no sense of civility. And I'm thinking, guys, this is what you're saying to your kids who you're going to send back to school so they can meet each other in the hall and go at each other. So just being able to establish rules for civil discourse, and this was also from the chat, someone said to define collectively, make a communal definition for what constitutes an attack versus a difference of opinion. And it's okay to passionately disagree. It's not okay to personally attack. So really having those, you might bring up something, a news article, and the conversation may not be from you. It may be straight from the kids, and they start going at each other. I've had that happen in class, and it can get ugly. So you establish rules for respectful discourse from the very beginning. And if it gets heated, don't be okay with saying, we're going to take a minute. I need everybody to take out a pen and paper, take out your computer keyboard, and we're going to write for about 4 or 5 minutes. And just whatever your feelings are, write them down, and then go back and look through them and see what's fact and what's opinion. And then if you feel tension, if you still feel the tension, then let's pull out some research, go through your writing. Find out, research, because there's research and there's good research. Use good sources, use plain old fact checker, and see what is fact and what is fiction. And then if you want to continue the conversation, then use your factual researched feelings that you've kind of struck through what's not right, what is not based on fact, and then have a discourse about it. So those are for those diverse campuses that can really derail. Those are my suggestions for you.
That is just ingenious suggestion, because it touches on so much. It goes even beyond the conversations that are being happening and the civility of it and stuff, but that also just brings in a whole cross curricular of being a good digital citizen and how to research and how to write. And just, I always say I think one of the most important things we need to teach kids is how to Google. Not necessarily how to use google.com, but how to Google in a sense of how do I go find information? How do I find the right information? How do I fact check? How to find good information, right? I love your research versus good research.
Oh,
right?
I saw that from the chat. I can't remember who said it, but straight from
whoever that is, good job. You could have totally took the credit. It would have been all right. But I love that because that's the biggest thing is like, how do I go utilize the fact that I can find anything about anything with a couple clicks? And I think doing that in that format, not while you're also teaching them how to take a breath, get their thoughts together and figure out, okay, am I fighting this person because I have a valid argument? Am I getting personal? Am I just believing because I have a bias or not? I think is so important. One of the things that I found that I do, and it's weird for me because I have a lot of friends and families that I've discovered that don't do this, and I'm trying to push it, is that when I see an article or a headline or a meme or a post or anything like that comes through, on my Facebook feed or whatever, that I agree with right away, I go and spend whatever I can, whether it's 15, 30, whatever minutes, trying to prove it wrong. And I do the same the other way. If I find something that like just gets me and I'm like, oh, they did not, I go and try to figure out, was it right? Or was it taken out of context? Was it this, right? Because, and I do that on both sides. Like when, I'm that way. I love listening to news radio, but I have stations that are far left, far right, middle each way, because I want to hear it all. And then one of my favorite things is to then go listen to international news.
Yes.
Because if it's big and it's amazing and it's crazy, but no one internationally is talking about it, it's probably just a U.S. thing, right? Is it really, right? And but I love going on both sides. And actually, like, I have a lot of people that I'm connected with that are complete ends. And it would be really easy for me to just kind of block this one, block that one, and just have the good feeling stuff. But I like seeing the both sides because I want to know, okay, am I feeling this way? Do I think this is right because of my bias or because it's actually good research? Is it actually the right thing to do? And I think that's really important. So crucial to teach our kids that.
It's hard. It's really hard. Early Small Bites was all about that. One of the strategies is go and read your favorite news outlet, and read a story, read that headline, and then go and find your least favorite news outlet and read the headline from them, and see how divergent those opinions, those points of views can be about the same subject. And when you realize that you do that enough times, you realize that you are not necessarily consuming truth, that journalism in this day and time can be very yellow.
Oh, and you talk about the two different sides of the same conversation. Sometimes it's of the same sentence.
Yeah.
But when it's put in this context, it looks this way, and put in this context, it looks this way, and like there's all these things, and I'm like, oh, like it's so important. It's so important to go both ways and to try. I always try and figure it out. I'm trying to think of our guest. We had a guest on our podcast who did this. I can't think of it. I apologize, but is to, when you ask the question, a lot of times you ask the question like, how can that person possibly think like this? Because he says what he does goes, oh, let me figure out how they could think like this. Why do they think that? Let me go research and figure it out. Let me go actually like jump into it and figure out, are they right or are they really crazy? But like, were they like, when you think like I just think that's so important. We're so quick to just jump into what's comfortable, which is what we already believe, our bias, stuff like that. I think you saw Jeff. He's now, I just
saw that and smiled.
There's a Team Jeff, Team Ray thing that's been going on for a while, and Jeff's jumping now. So I get it. I get it, Jeff. We'll have to get a shirt going.
Thank you, Jeff.
Holly, thank you. It's Holly Common, Holly Stewart. So I'm going to throw a question. We kept going. I'm going to pick one and throw one at you here. So you've kind of touched on a lot of this stuff too. This is a good one. And you kind of, I think we already touched on this, but I'm going to let you kind of wrap on it. So heading into an election, how are you preparing to have productive relationships with colleagues and students whose opinion on race and politics differ from yours? We've kind of touched on that, but are you doing anything personally like to prepare for that? I'm sure you're aware, at least a little bit aware of like who in your your community and your colleagues are here and there and have an idea and stuff. What are you doing to prepare yourself for those conversations? Or I can't imagine you're someone who just stays out of it. That's
Well,
not what you want to get in, but
here's the funny thing. In the 2016 election cycle, and give me a second. Ooh, I'm sorry, I'm bad by 9, so this is like late for me. Okay.
It's all good, all good. We're only gonna keep you up for like another hour and a half, and then you can go to bed. No worries.
Okay, sure. Just wake me up.
So you need? I have coffee. I don't know what.
Yeah. Okay, so in 2016, I was in a very conservative political environment where I was one of maybe 2 people on staff who did not vote right. And this time I am in a school where there may be 1 or 2 conservative people, or if they are, they're very quiet, but I'm pretty sure that mostly everybody votes left. And so it's interesting. Those are conversations that I really don't have to have very much. Our school is also very diverse. Kind of like Jeff was saying, a large Title I school that has a large international population. So the conversations are interesting, but they are much less U.S. black and white. You know what I mean? They're just, it's much broader. So they're not conversations that I'm necessarily preparing for. Having said that, there was one comment from a chat. She said that she's married to an immigrant, I believe, and
yeah, I saw that. Yep.
Yeah, and she is, but she's a new teacher, a first-year teacher at a new school. And that makes for a difficult position because you don't know, you don't want to misstep. You don't want to be, be seen as a rabble-rouser. Sure, yeah. At the same time, you don't want to be seen as somebody who, doesn't take a stance. Yeah. So navigating that is really difficult. I simply say, be true to yourself. And there's always a way to speak your truth without alienating. Mm-hmm. In the 2016 election, at that particular school, I was able to say, well, I wonder what the other news outlet says about that. Do you look at both? Because sometimes the truth is somewhere in between. Things like that are not, they're not you statements. They're not, you need to be more woke. I hate that. Oh my God, I can't believe you think that way. Drop those kinds of sentences from your vocabulary because they are alienating. So if you have those conversations, simply share your lived experience. I mean, that my thing is that I think that I can appeal to people who may not believe at all what I believe by simply sharing my lived experience. And even if I am a white male who's been, very privileged, and I've come to some other understanding, I don't have to go and say, what? You don't know that? Hey, man, you're privileged. Look at me. We know I can still say, well, I've come to think, or I've read some books and I feel like, but that's where I am right now. And that's it. You don't have to proselytize. No one ever wants to be beat over the head with your truth. Mm-hmm. If you're sharing your lived experiences, that's one thing. And sometimes you can also just wait until you're asked.
That's true too. And you kind of touched on, I'm a white male. I've very privileged life. I mean, just in all around, and I've known that for a long time. I have a good friend of mine who kind of opened my eyes up to a lot of that about a decade or so ago, but then so much more as I've continued to branch out and meet new people and hear more life stories. And more recently that I've been more willing to say something and stand up, and because I'm learning, I'm trying to grow. But I agree that it doesn't work if it's like the sentences you say, like, well, I can't believe you think that way, or how are you? Because I'm like, hey, it wasn't that long ago that I didn't realize that either.
It's
and
like,
so, it's funny, some of the things you said or some of the things I've said recently to people is like, well, I get that, but like something I've realized recently is da 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 da, and they're like, well, wait, I've never done that. I've never experienced that. I'm like, well, this is why I spoke to someone who went through this experience, and then I did some research on it. I figured out, like, hey, that happens a lot. Like, I don't know if you didn't know that, or if it's someone from where I'm from, very not diverse at all. And we were talking. I said, yeah, we didn't experience that because we grew up in a 99.9% upper middle class, white neighborhood. Like it's just what we had, we had a great area, very low crime. And I'm like, and there's nothing wrong with that. I said, but what we do need to understand is just, it's been, we have to understand that not everyone else had that. And that's the difference. And so I found, one of the things that really was a big one is actually reading White Fragility was a incredible book to read for me personally, because it's something that I've seen people feel and I felt in the past. And like, it's such a eye-opening thing, but I think you hit it on the head, the way those conversations, you can have very difficult conversations in a respectful, friendly way, and it doesn't have to be, it can be uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be uncomfortable, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. It can be an uncomfortable topic and even feel uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to feel threatening, like and alienating, because as soon as you do that, like, it's done. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're talking to someone who has a lot of privilege, because it's super easy to go, yeah, I'm going to go back to my privilege, right? And it's super easy to do that. So mm-hmm. we need to have the conversations in that respectful way, which is why I love when you're talking about with the students and having them take a breath and to write down how they're feeling rather than attacking each other. So now we can have a conversation. So really appreciate that. So I don't want to keep you up forever. So I don't want to do that. Can you give us all a really quick, and you've touched on it a couple of times, but can you tell us about your I'm blanking, Small Bites, right?
Small Bites.
Can you give us the rundown of that, what it is, where we can find it, all that stuff, so everyone listening, because I know everyone that's watching right now is going to go check it out if they haven't already, because the comments are showing how much they love you right now. So can you give us the rundown on that?
Yes. I'm sorry. I was reading Jeff Kaplan again. Yeah, I know that. I have a friend of mine, and he said he actually confirmed. I'm sorry, Jeff wrote. Can you put his last comment up so that?
Yep. Right there, that's a great one, Jeff. Yeah.
So I have a friend, actually, we work together, and he was saying that he was doing the whole college frat boy thing until some anti-Semitic thing came up and slapped him, basically gave him a smackdown, and he realized that he was different and he was kind of living a lie. And it just kind of, made him into this kind of whole, he's this very cool, was a rabbi, is now an educator, and very much works through a social justice and equity lens. And so that experience came out of him realizing, hey, I'm white, but wait, hold up. Actually, no, I guess I'm not, kind of a thing. And so, yeah. But tell me your question again. It was about...
Well, your Small Bites, just everything about it. Tell us what it is. Why we want to go check it out, and
all right.
Everything like that.
/Hedreich. I mean, if you can spell my name, you can find me anywhere. It's Hedreich on Twitter, and Hedreich on Facebook, and Hedreich on Instagram. And
apparently, if you Google it, there's some music out there too. So if we got an ad, I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, I actually took those videos down so I can at least get
come on
the videos, but they're still out there. You can go find.
I'm gonna find them.
I was on the charts in Switzerland for a while, and that video is still out there.
I'm gonna do some good research.
Good research. So Small Bites is a YouTube series on equity that I started earlier this year, just kind of in response to feeling a little like I needed to do more. Like I could share my stories and have people understand a little bit more about racism and anti-racism, and understand a little bit more about what they can do as educators to make a difference. And so I usually has an anecdote for a couple of minutes. And then at the end, I give 5 strategies. Usually they're 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 15, 10, and 5 minutes. So that really, it's called the equity strategies for busy people, Small Bites. So that everybody, because I knew that this time would be coming, that school was going to reopen and people would just forget that George Floyd died and the protest, and okay, yeah, we got other things to, other fish to fry. And so I wanted to make something that people could come back. The videos are never longer than 6 or 7 minutes unless I do a live session. And that's very rare. That's a kind of special thing. They're usually about 5 minutes, and they give you 5 different strategies that you can use to help you to keep doing the work. And some of the things only take 5 minutes. Some of them are fun, family-friendly things, like watching an episode of Blackish, which always takes a social justice, historical kind of perspective on things. And so... we
just became enemies.
Oh,
You taking Kaplan from me? No. Sorry.
God.
Go on. Sorry, I shouldn't even put it up. I just threw us off again. I told you.
Are really about school reopening. So instead of doing the minutes things for these last 2 weeks, last Friday and tomorrow, they're on content. So that because we think of social justice, leave it to that's humanities, but there are these crazy awesome science and math websites where you can really teach language acquisition, lesson plans, things that you can find that are already created so that you don't have to learn how to use Schoology and make up lesson plans through a social justice lens. Because, hey, how much time do you really have? So, that just kind of takes the work out of planning for this year and allows you to still keep a social justice lens. Like for PE, I'm going to talk about the fact that this week a lot of sports players boycotted their games. Violated their contracts to show support. That was huge. Or last week there was a math one, and it's about the website is not old white dude mathematician. No, not old dead white dude mathematicians. And it's like all these different mathematicians from different cultures that you can actually share with your kids, and especially if you teach in international school, showing them that the math and science people also look like them. So that's kind of where Small Bites is coming from. And you can see it 8 p.m. Central every Friday night on YouTube.
Awesome. So there you go. Love it. Thank you so much for an awesome Master Chat, for coming on and hanging out with us. I have a feeling that our audience wouldn't mind seeing you live every now and then more often. So I'm going to work on that, all y'all watching, and I'll do what I can here. So
you're jealous, Jeff. Yeah.
I'm going to get more. No, I'm going to get more jealous. I'm going to bring you on more, and then they're all going to just leave me. But that's why I come on too. So I can I'm cool by association at this point. So, hopefully some will rub off and whatever. So no, I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you leading the chat. It was great and important stuff, and look forward to continue to learn and grow with you. Everyone go check out Small Bites and keep connected, and have an awesome rest of your night. I do want to let you know next week, let's see who we got next week. We got Janice Wyatt Ross next week, and we were talking about building a culture for advocacy. So another one next week going to be great. So appreciate you all coming out and checking in and being part of the chat. We'll see you next week, same time, 8:00 Eastern. And until then, we appreciate you and have an awesome night. Thanks, guys.
Good night, everybody.